5 years ago, Botham Jean was shot and killed in his own apartment. Now, 5 years later, his killer is eligible for parole. And understandably, his family is outraged. We have reporting here from Atlanta Black Star. Jean's relatives expressed strong opposition to Guyger's potential release, especially as her new parole status coincided with what would have been his 33rd birthday. Guyger, who is white, shot Jean to death on September 6, 2018, after mistakenly entering the wrong apartment and opening fire. Don't know how you mistakenly do that. Amber later claimed that she believed Jean was an intruder in her unit. Her apartment was located one floor below Jean's fourth floor apartment, asserting that her actions were legally justified under the belief that she was defending herself. Guyger was off duty at the time of the shooting, but still in uniform. However, there was no body cam footage to verify her version of what took place. Guyger testified that she was so confused at the time of the shooting that she had to step outside the apartment to check the unit number before providing it to the 911 dispatcher. Amber went on trial a year later. Ultimately, Guyger was convicted of Jean's murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison in September 2019. The judgment was later upheld by an appeals court in 2022. It remains uncertain when the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles will decide on Guyger's potential release, which would be 5 years ahead of serving her full sentence. And yes, Botham Jean's family is outraged. His sister, Alyssa Charles Finley, said Guyger's parole would be very traumatic for their family, and having it occur on his birthday felt like losing Botham all over again, according to the Dallas Morning News. At Guyger's sentencing, she faced a potential prison term ranging from 5 years to life. The jury considered, but ultimately dismissed, a sudden passion defense, which could have lowered her sentence to a range of 2 to 20 years. Before Guyger was sent away, Botham Jean's younger brother, Brant Jean, took the stand to read his victim impact statement, telling the defendant, "If you truly are sorry, I know I can speak for myself. I forgive you." Brant Jean, Botham's brother, then stepped down from the witness stand while Amber Guyger stood from her seat, and the two met in the center of the courtroom where they hugged each other in a warm embrace. While in prison, Guyger appealed her conviction 4 times, but each attempt was rejected by the Court of Criminal Appeals in 2022. Guyger is one of only 2 Dallas police officers ever convicted of murder. Whenever we have updates to these stories, we like to hear updates. We like to follow up on things and see how they persist, because the people in these stories, even after they fall out of the main headlines, even after they fall out of the news cycles and out of the, all the virality of social media, the people who are involved are still very, very much dealing with the loss of somebody and the injustice of what has happened to this person that they loved. So it's good to follow up. Sometimes those follow-ups are reassuring, and sometimes they leave you a little wanting for more. And in this case, it kind of, I know 2018 seems like a very, very long time ago. A lot has happened since then, but I remember when this story first broke, and it was very controversial, as these type of stories always are. Even in cases where it seems like there's a clear right or wrong, things get muddled, not just in terms of what was right and what was wrong and what should have happened and what didn't happen, all these things, but it also becomes muddled in terms of, all of these racial conversations and all of these political conversations. They become politicized. They become socially relevant in a way that, maybe an open and shut court case wouldn't necessarily be. So, Tehran, what do you think about the implications of what is happening? Also, the fact that she is a cop, and there's all those political implications as far as, a white cop killing a Black man while he was sleeping in his apartment.
I think that the state of Missouri murdered Marcellus Williams just a couple days ago, and here we see Amber Guyger being offered parole. I
Mhm.
see that so many times we have signs that say free Pookie and free Tookie, but free Amber Guyger is actually something that might go through. I see a white woman, a police officer, who went to the wrong apartment and shot the person who was supposed to be there and is getting out possibly on parole and only got 10 years to begin with. Do I think that the same thing would have happened to Botham Jean had he been the one who shot Amber Guyger? went into the wrong apartment, shot Amber Guyger, do I think he would have been eligible for parole after 5 years? No, I think that the system would have put him under the jail. So that's what the problem is. This is racially motivated. It is a systemic problem. There is that blue wall that we often come up against, and there's no Rapunzel to let their hair down and let us climb over. I think that we need to be more cognizant of our ideals as a country, that all men and all women and all people are created equally. And that means also under the guise and the justice of the law.
Absolutely. And it's just the fact that none of this needed to happen, right? And the fact that she happened to be a cop is also insane, because she had a gun ready to go. I don't know how she ended up in somebody else's apartment thinking it was her own, and then she ran into somebody who she, according to her, believed was an intruder, but she already had a deadly weapon ready to go, and so her first instinct was to just shoot and kill this person. And, there's a lot that can be said about guns and gun control and all these things in our country, but the fact of the matter is that if there wasn't a gun there, then nobody would have died. Even like, let's say in the best case scenario, the absolute best case scenario, that this was all just a big misunderstanding, somebody didn't need to die for that to happen. Even if he was an intruder and she was a woman, there was a big guy in what she thought was her house, that is a very threatening situation. But I don't know how you just walk into someone else's apartment on a different floor and think it's your own, like I don't remember the details of the story. Maybe that was discussed 5 years ago when this first came out, but like the door wasn't unlocked. I don't remember. But there's all these implications, there's all these questions that we have, and even in the case of it being an accident, like, why did somebody have to die for something that was mistaken? And, as far as her being a cop, she has all kinds of protections because she happened to be a cop who did this, and things like this are going to keep happening unless these people who do these things are punished appropriately. She went to jail, but now she's getting out, and some people think that she didn't serve quite enough time for what she did. And you're absolutely right that there are Black men who are still sitting in jail for things that they didn't even do, and they're being killed for things that they didn't even do. Innocent people are being killed by the state, right? Like, we just saw that happen. It happens all the time. Here in Texas, the death penalty is also legal. So we're seeing all these things happen. Any final thoughts, Tehran?
I actually understand the idea of the misunderstanding of it all. I
Mhm.
am going with the concept that Amber Guyger was not aware of the situation. However, I'm not a police officer and I would be better trained because I would have just left the apartment and called 911. I'm not a police officer and I'm better trained because I would have drawn my weapon and asked the person to identify themselves and asked for some information.
Mhm.
Let's remove the racial component because I don't know if Amber Guyger would have shot Billie Jean or Bobby Jean or a white person in their apartment. But I do know that she shot and killed without asking questions first. And that is unbecoming of a trained police officer in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could forgive it if it was just like a regular woman who walked into the wrong apartment on accident, didn't realize she did it, and then, reacted improperly. But this was a cop. And I think that distinction is so important because she should have known better. She should have been able to handle that situation better. Me, I'm a very small female. If I walked into my house and I saw somebody there, I would not know how to react. And my first instinct would be to flee, like to run away. I wouldn't even think to confront this person. That would be my first instinct as a small female who is untrained at combat. I can't take on anybody. I can't defend myself in a lot of different ways if I don't have a gun, whatever. But yeah, she was a cop. So she is a little bit different. She's not the average woman out there just like dealing with an intruder in her house. So